This is Darren Marchant with American Nomad News. And before we begin, I'd like to announce that this particular video is being made because I have to film everything from my cell phone and apps I am not used to. I'm used to a desktop computer, and I accidentally deleted too many videos. And when I found out that the uploads were all fouled up because of this, I went back and I looked, and I have some of the later videos, but I deleted some of the earliest stuff, and that means I have to remake this one. It really fouled me up. So if I mention something that I may have mentioned in the first video and it's not in this one, I apologize, but I'll try and touch on everything. This is adapting farming to microgravity. Now, Aeroponics, for the sake of this series, is going to be involved in microgravity, lunar, and Martian environments. And for the next few videos, we're just going to focus on microgravity in the context of an Aldrin cycler, very large processing and transport facility that is on an eccentric orbit that crosses Earth and Mars on a regular basis, and that allows for the transfer of people and equipment, and it's a good foundation upon which to build a very large station, and it doesn't require a lot of fuel to, once it's in orbit. The only thing you really need is propulsion for is to correct the orbit a little bit here and there, just to station keeping. And the space station can be very large, and it doesn't all have to be centrifugal. So the vast majority of the station space would be a tessellated framework. We'll get into that in other videos. So for this context, it's a equilateral triangular framework that is 3 meters on an edge, and that allows for our microgravity greenhouse. In this segment, we're going to discuss how to grow lettuce theoretically in that environment. We know that lettuce does not need gravity or centrifugal force because it's been grown on the International Space Station. This was done on a very small scale, and what I'm discussing is thinking about how can we do it on a very large scale. Now imagine you make a quilt where the stuffing is composted material and the cloth is burlap, and you make it in a 3 meter on a side equilateral triangle, and you mount it on those struts in a plane. You create a differential air pressure with fans that pulls moisture and air through those battings, and that is a good environment in which to do an aeroponic grow operation. Lettuce could be implanted in there and grown in that manner. Now let's take a look at how hydroponics is used. There is a particularly interesting method that I saw out of Japan on a YouTube video, and I don't have links for this stuff, but it was a donut-shaped table, 3 or 4 inches of water. The sprouts were grown in a sterile environment in a separate building, and kind of like a walk-in refrigerator, and they were brought out, and then the person would climb up over the water trough. Remember, the table's shaped like a donut. It's got a hole in the middle, and otherwise it's a trough of water that's constantly rotating. and he would climb up over that, and in from the center he would put these small sprouts in, and as they grew bigger, they would move outward. The rotation causes a slight centrifugal force, so these plants would go to the outer edge, and you could start the small ones just by putting them in the water, and as they got big enough on the outside edge, you could take the fully grown ones out of the water, and that would make more room, and they would constantly be filling that space. It was really efficient. It was really cool. Unfortunately, in space, we really don't have the option of using hydroponics as easily as we could use aeroponics. So in aeroponics, you have a dense vapor of nutrient-rich water mixed with air, read oxygen and CO2. The plants do use some oxygen, just a little. They respirate during part of their growth cycle, and they use a little bit of oxygen. But mostly what they do is they pull in CO2, strip the carbon off through a process called photosynthesis, and use that as building material for the plant, and then they dump the oxygen. And that's a benefit that we get living on the space station. That and the food and building materials and in chemistry and all sorts of things that we can get from plants. So in microgravity, water tends to clump together in spherical little bubbles floating around. And this can be a problem. It drowns the roots. So if you're running fans blowing this water in a circuit, okay, and it has to go in one area and through the plant medium and back out and back through another area and back out again, then what happens is it's gonna come apart, and the droplets are gonna be small, and that's what you want. That way the roots get plenty of air, and the leaves get moved around, which is good for the plant. Pot growers know this. They put fans in the grow rooms, and it keeps the stalks strong so they don't break. Because every time it stresses the plant reacts by growing more vegetative matter, and that's good. So lettuce, you don't worry about that as much, but other crops like corn, which could certainly be grown in microgravity, this blowing action could serve those purposes as well. With hydroponics, you have to add chemistry to the plants. But with aquaponics, the fish adds chemistry, or add chemistry to the water, and the fish in aquaponics adds chemistry to the water that gets cleaned out by the plants. So the plants get the nitrogen, and the pumping process aerates the water, and the fish get to enjoy the water. In microgravity, you're going to need centrifuges. Now, a centrifuge in this microgravity environment does not have to be the whole station itself with the shielding, life support, propulsion units, everything spinning all at once. That puts a heavy, heavy load on the whole system. In this kind of system, it's like you have this big scaffolding that's not rotational and is affected by a microgravity environment all the way through, and yet you may have a centrifugal chicken coop, you may have a centrifugal living spaces for the workers and the transportees, the passengers. And the chicken coop may not have to spin at 1 full G. You may actually want to spin it at 1 1/4 or 3/4, depending on the results of the experiments of, do the chickens like it? Do they come out healthy? Do the processes work? Like this. You may also have centrifuges that spin water out of the air so that you can pump it through aquaponics systems, so the fish get this nice aerated, cleaned water, and then you can pump it back out into sprayers that spray it on the plants, and the fans keep moving it around. So you can really do some really interesting water processing with this multi-G environment. Thank you very much for tuning in. Sorry I had to remake this video, and it's a little bit off key because I was really on a roll with the other ones. And I appreciate you checking in. Please like, subscribe, and share. Click the bell icon. I really appreciate comments because it really helps me to understand where you're at. I want to know your reactions. What do you think about these things? And if you're not that interested, share it with someone who's in aerospace, or who grows pot, or who works in elevated farming, or is interested in life on Mars. Thank you very much. Have an awesome day. Next time.